Hello, world. Hello, everybody out there. Can you hear me? You can't hear me. I can't hear you. So that's really a silly question. Yeah, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wait about 5 minutes or so. So people who are refreshing their browser to get the video up and running won't miss anything. And then, yeah, so in about 5 minutes, we will start the webinar properly, and I can share with you all that I know. Yes, I'm looking forward to, well, at least 5 things that I know. We'll see how it goes. So about 4.5 minutes away from starting. I am in my home right now. This is my work area, my study. The table behind me is where my kids work. So when I'm in here working away, Aria and Hugo usually like to grab pen and paper and do their work, which is very cute. And it is, yeah, this is kind of like my little spot that I get to do and come up with creative ideas. This is actually the place where I thought of singular chirophobia, right here. If you don't know what that is, YouTube it, singular chirophobia. And I hope you enjoy the laugh. It's a funny video. Well, I think it's a funny video. So we'll wait a few more minutes to get this going. But yeah, so how are you? Again, another question that I can't hear the answer to, but I'm going to assume you are doing well. That's awesome to hear. Very good to hear. I'm doing well. I won an Asbaty yesterday. Woohoo! So that was really cool. The Asbaties are an award, ESPN kind of awards that are voted by the fans. So thank you to all my fans and everyone who voted for me on winning the Asbaty. It's now my second Asbaty, and I am thrilled, absolutely thrilled. It's a really special award. It's an opportunity for bowling to also rub shoulders with the other mainstream sports, especially in the US. So we bowlers take it very seriously, and I'm very honoured and proud to have won another Asbaty. So thank you again. What else is going on in my life? I just got back from Japan. I was bowling in the World Open, which is a part of the WTBA World Bowling Tour, an event that had 10 million yen for first place, which is give or take a few dollars, but it's about 81,000 US dollars and about 107,000 Australian dollars for the top prize. Unfortunately, I did not walk away with it, but another two-handed expert did. Oscar Palermo won the title, beating Isao Yamamoto in the final. And Oscar bowled, it was going to be really tough to beat that guy. He was bowling really well. He was using a Optimus Solid, and the ball looked incredible on the lane. Just really blended out the friction with the oil, so he never really saw too much overreaction, and a lot of other players did, including myself. And he executed great. And when you're throwing the ball with 600 RPM and you're executing great, it's going to be pretty tough to beat. So congratulations, Oscar. And of course, though, the biggest and main reason that we were happy about being in Japan was the Olympic movement. I mean, I know a lot of people understand that bowling is on the short list, but I really want to kind of reiterate the fact that we are the closest we have ever been to being in the Olympics. We are in a list of 8 sports, short list of 8 sports, fighting for, we don't know how many spots. There are whispers on the tree line that there is either 3 or 4 spots that may be eligible to go in to the Olympics. So that means we are, really, really close now, with 8 sports fighting for 3 or 4 spots. My gut feeling is baseball/softball is probably a no-brainer. The Japanese are very good at it. And it's also good for the Olympics. You get to fit a lot of people in stadiums, so there's a lot of kind of benefits to, financial benefits to having a huge sporting spectacle like that. And I would have to think karate is up there. I mean, it's such a traditional form of fighting in Japan. And again, it's only an assumption, but I'm pretty sure the Japanese are pretty good at it. So it's going to give them an opportunity to win some medals, same as baseball, softball. But bowling did have a good showing there in Japan at the World Open last week. We had a Japanese guy, Isao Yamamoto from Japan, come in second. So if the committee was there, the IOC, the Olympic Committee were there to see that a Japanese player did well against the best bowlers invited from all over the world, I think is a really positive step as well. So it kind of worked out well in the end for bowling, for Japan, and really well for Oscar. So I'm sure he's celebrating somewhere right now in Gothenburg, Sweden. Actually, he might be in San Marino. There's a European bowling tournament. Anyway, let's get into this, shall we? So thank you. I am Jason Belmonte. I am a part of a really awesome team at the IAB, the International Art of Bowling. And we wanted to share with you through me some tips that I really sat down and I really thought about what were some of the things that, propelled me from being a really good player to being one of the best in the world and been one of the best in the world now for a few years. So we put together this list of 5 things and we're going to run through them today. And the thing that I liked about this list, and when I was making this list, was, there's no point, I guess, sharing ideas with you that maybe couldn't help you. Like, one of the reasons why I know I was successful was the fact that, the guys on tour, we had some new ball reps that came on tour and they helped a lot. They helped with their shape of the ball and viewing it from behind the settee and, seeing them telling me their perspective certainly opened up a lot of opportunities for me on the lanes to be able to say, I didn't see it like that. So thank you for sharing that. And that's not something that, we all have the luxury of having in our league, and I don't have it in league, but only on tour. So there was no point talking about that. So I felt like the 5 things that I brought up here were things that we could all do, no matter what level we were at, no matter what the competition level we were in. So I hope that we can all take something away from this and kind of learn that whilst these things are, they're not simple. Some of them are, they're quite difficult. I think in the end, if you were to take them all on board, you will be a better player. Well, I became a better player. So I can only hope that it would do the same thing for you. So let's get started. The first point that I told you I was going to help you on was this: how to stop falling off shots and develop laser accuracy simply by having better balance at the foul line. Now, if we were to rewind the clock about 5 years ago, I was a very good player still. I was winning around the world. But then I went to the US and I started to compete on the Pro Tour. And one thing that I noticed was that I was falling off balance more than the other players. And when you're having success, things like that don't necessarily trigger an emotional attachment to bad bowling or this is the reason why I didn't make the cut, because you've had success doing something that you kind of considered to be normal or felt normal. I didn't see it as a red flag until I got to the Pro Tour, and the top guys very rarely fell off their shot, and if they did, it was their bad shots. Sometimes they got away with it, other times they didn't, and you could see that they were unhappy with that delivery. So looking at my game, and I used to have this big kind of whipping trail leg. It used to really whip up, and I started to study it, and with help from Diandra, she explained to me, and we kind of both came up with the idea that violent whipping action is very difficult to repeat, and especially very difficult to hold your balance with such a large force going the opposite way. So we worked on creating a trail leg anchored down, and I would basically get to the foul line And the only thought in my mind was, I'm going to keep my trail leg as low as I can. If I can get it to the ground, awesome. And then I'm going to anchor it there. And one thing I'm going to do after that is I'm not going to move from my finishing position until the ball goes through the pins. Now, that sounds really easy to do. And in our clinics that we do for the IAB, it's one of the drills that we do is, stay down till the ball hits the pins. And it is incredibly difficult. You think it would be easy, but your body is so naturally designed to throw the ball and then move, ride it out, or pop up, or turn around and go get your spare ball because you think it's a bad shot. But the discipline that it takes to stay there until the ball hits the pin is really important when you're talking about repeating your balance to be like that. If you've got discipline and you can control yourself and your body to be able to stay in a position at the release point, you're already on your way to having a much, much more consistent game. Now, consistency in bowling, repetition, those are the things that produce the champions, okay? Believe me, I love to throw messages and break pins, and that's all well and cool and fun. It looks great. But at the end of the day, is if my next 3 shots are out the window, my score is not going to be very good. So I might have a highlight reel shot, yay, but I'm going to come last, and I don't want to come last. So repeating is more important than looking cool, okay? And in the end, if you're solid at the foul line and you're anchoring your trail leg down, feel like there's a weight in that trail leg, so it doesn't want to pop up or move around, that's going to look cool, because those are what the pros look like. And that's kind of, the big change that I made in my balance was the ability to keep that trail leg down. The second thing I did was I would move my release position closer towards my ankle and more in line with my chin, under my chin. And that was a huge factor in the ability to not fall off my shot as well. So if you were to think about this, if my position that I would like to release the ball at and my head obviously is looking at my target, my eyes and my head are all facing the target that I'm looking, if I release the ball away from my head, okay, and I'm seeing that shape of the ball go towards my target. So I may see the ball go straight over my board. Might be the second arrow, the 13th board, whatever it might be. I'll see it go straight over that board, and the ball will go high, and it'll be puzzling to me. I hit my target. Why didn't it strike? So bringing that release point back in towards my line of sight, under my chin, one, creates absolutely laser-like accuracy, because now the ball is traveling on the same path that I'm looking. So whilst from this angle I hit my target, it's now come at a very different trajectory. And that's huge. That's a big difference in the ability of that ball going through the pins the way that you want it or going high. So here are the two shapes: under my chin going away from the pocket, away from my body going towards the pocket. Hitting the same target, but ultimately two very different shapes. So I brought that ball under my chin. What that also did was it created a lot more leverage, and now my body wasn't outweighed by this heavy 15-pound ball, away from my body. So if you were to think of it a bit like holding a suitcase, okay? If you were to hold a suitcase really close to your body and stand up, you can lift it up and down quite easily, and it's not going to be too much pressure, and you're not going to fall off your stand. You're not going to fall off balance. Now, if I move that suitcase, a heavy suitcase, and put it away from my body, away from my chin, away from my center of gravity, now my body's going to want to lean, okay? It's going to want to lean so it counteracts that weight, and ultimately my leg will also go up to counteract it, and all of a sudden now it's a bit of a balancing act. And it's also harder and more strenuous on your body. So the two things I want to just recap on what I did to create better balance, which will help you immediately, is one, I created an anchor point with my trail leg, and two, I moved that ball at the release away from my ankle towards my ankle. So it went from away towards it and more in line with my chin, created better leverage, created a lot better line of sight, which helped me with my accuracy and my ball shape. So that's the first tip. Very simple, very difficult to do. Trail leg, ball closer to your ankle, more underneath your chin, and create that drill that I just said, staying down before the ball hits the pins. When the ball goes off the pin deck, then you're good to move on to the next shot. All right, so before I get on to the next one, I want to take one question here from Zach Cardenas. He wrote this question in the Google Hangout here, and the tip he has is, what is the best tip you have ever received? Well, besides the 5 that I'm going to give you today, the very best tip that I've ever received, I think, to put me on the spot there, Zach, and to think of one immediately, I think is less is more. Now, that sounds a bit funny because I bowl with 2 hands and I have an extremely high rev rate, but I want you to imagine a younger version of me that ran faster towards the foul line, that hit the ball twice as hard as I do now, and I was very, very erratic. I wanted it to be the breaking of pins. So I think when I learned I don't have to break pins every single time, I don't have to throw 650 RPMs to strike. I can actually still strike quite well at 570 RPMs. When I decreased that power, my accuracy went up, my balance went up, and even though I didn't have an anchor point, it went up considering the way that I used to throw it. I became a more clutch player. The erratic style and the running and the aggression, it's very easy to overhit it or to throw it even harder and get all amped up. I took all that away from the game, and now I feel like I'm smoother and I'm more consistent and I repeat better, all because less is more. So, there are, I guess, some people that, more is more. If you don't throw very many revolutions, you probably don't want to be throwing any less. But if throwing, a few less revs is going to help you with your balance, with your accuracy, with your repeatability, then yeah, I guess less is more for you as well. So thanks, Zach. That's probably the best tip that I ever received. All right, let's move on to the second tip that I want to teach you guys today that will directly help your game. Number 2 was how to instantly annihilate distractions that force bad shots and come away with game winners. Now, this is a huge thing for players, right? It's how do I get up there, whether you need a strike to win, maybe it's a strike in the 10th to get your average, or perhaps you've just bowled a couple of bad shots, you've got a strike, and now you're looking for that double to kind of recover the game a little bit. And those moments, we add more pressure to them. We shouldn't, but as humans, we're not silly. We know the situation and we understand that this moment, whilst it's not any more important than the next, it feels like it is. Now, that's a really important thing to understand, is that feeling. You have to actually understand that the game itself is merely broken into 10 parts. One game of bowling is 10 parts, 1 through 10. Now, if you have bad 1, 2, 3, no problem. We have to be able to forget about the distractions of the game that has gone before us, the frames before us, and work on, okay, this is the frame that I'm in now. This is the present. This is the most important frame. Distractions at this point become heightened. Your ears hear things that you probably wouldn't normally hear. And obviously, you get more frustrated with those distractions. So how do you annihilate those distractions? Pre-shot routine, for me, is critical. When I get on the approach, I've had, babies cry. I've had people drop glasses, and it does not bother me. And even when I do hear a distraction, sometimes I can still hear it. I'm so focused on my pre-shot routine and then focusing on my process, on my approach, that I hear it and it's like it goes in and goes straight out. It does not alter my process. And that's not easy to do. But if you have a pre-shot routine, it will help you get into the zone. And that's kind of where you want to be for every frame, is in that zone where, everything else is blurry except what you're doing and what you want to achieve in that shot. So on television, it's very stressful, and there's a lot of people watching, and you also have a lot of people in front of you, okay? So sudden movements, someone drops their phone, those kinds of things are accidental, but they can throw you off. So you have to be able to accept it and know that at any time a distraction is able to come into my mind, and I'm going to have to blur it out. So I do that with a pre-shot. As soon as I get up onto my approach, I dry my ball, I dry my hands, I have a pre-shot routine, and at that moment, you could probably even call my name, and I'm more than likely not going to listen to you. I'm just in my zone. Once I start my approach, all I'm worried about now is my process. How do I want to throw this ball? What are the step paths? What's the speed that I'm walking? What's the speed I'm going to let go of the ball? What is my target? What is the shape that I'm doing? All of those things have just run through my mind very quickly, and now I have a very focused path on what I want. Anything that comes in is immediately blurred out because that is not my priority. Another thing that you can also do to help with those distractions is I tend to kind of find them amusing. If something grabs your attention and it does distract you, our immediate want is to turn around and get angry. And for me, as soon as I get angry, I'm basically opening the floodgates of all this emotion and allowing it to affect not just that one shot, but the next one that I take and the next one that I take after that. Because all I can think about is, oh man, that guy that, dropped that glass, he put me off. Now how am I going to bowl my big game? Or why would that happen? Why would he cough in the middle of my swing? So I tend to turn around and just go, it's unfortunate timing, but I would almost bet my last dollar that 99.9% of distractions are accidental. So you just have to basically say it wasn't on purpose, it was an accident. I'm going to distract it. I'm going to laugh at it. I'm going to embrace the fact that it could have happened to anyone, and I'm going to move on from this. If you can do that and you can kind of own that distraction, then anything that they throw at you or anything that they do to you, it's just not going to affect you nearly as bad. So I hope that second question, that second topic or tip is really helpful, because it doesn't matter what level you're at, whether it be, some kids in the background that are playing and having fun on a video game while you're bowling. Those are those little things that the weaker player, okay, that a player whose mental game is not nearly as strong as the opponent's game, they will lose the match, because those little things, you cannot prevent them, okay? You cannot bowl in complete silence. It's just impossible. You can ask for complete silence, but it's just impossible for it to always be like that. So you have to be able to accept the fact that life will go on after the distraction, but I have to be able to grab it, blur it, throw it out. Before I move on to the third tip, I would like to answer a question here from Matthew Brink, whose question comes from the Hangout. And he writes, I'm struggling with my spare shooting on sport shot patterns. What are some accuracy tips to minimize error? Should I throw plastic at all of my spares? Really, really good question, Matthew. Sparing on sport patterns is unbelievably important. Not that spares are not important all the time, but on sport patterns, you're generally throwing more spares. The lanes are harder, so you're leaving more pins on the deck, so you're going to have to improve that spare shooting. Tip number one, always use a spare ball. There are many people that have the ability to throw that reactive ball straighter, and if you're one of those, fantastic. But 99% of us out there, including yours truly, find it a lot easier to get a ball going straighter using a plastic ball. Okay, when I throw my spare ball, I know that even if I was to just change my tilt just a little bit, or maybe create a little bit of axis rotation because, I don't know, my hand slipped or whatever, I know that plastic ball is going to skid on that oil and still go in a relatively straight line. As soon as I start using any other kind of bowling ball, even a urethane bowling ball, it still creates a little bit of shape. And it makes it a little bit harder on those sport patterns, or on any pattern for that matter, to spare the corner pins, multiple pins. So get yourself a spare ball and throw the ball as straight as you can. Okay, if you take the lane out of play, then you're going to improve your ability to spare. If you do hook the ball at your spares, okay, we're talking about on easier patterns where there's a friction spot to the right and maybe a little hold to the left. So if you miss a little left, it'll still hold on target before it gets to the 7 pin. Or if you throw it a little too far to the right, it'll just hook more and still spare the 7 pin. That's great. When you're bowling on sport patterns, you don't have that built-in friction spot. You don't have that hold spot. So if you are using a reactive and you try to curve at your spares and you're a little bit off, you could catch more oil, causing the ball to shoot past the spare. Or if you miss it a little inside, you're not going to have that hold oil, that hold spot to get it to still travel into the right direction. It's just going to hook, left or right, depending if you're left or right-handed, and you're going to miss that spare. So Matthew, for sure, get yourself a plastic ball. For sure, straighten your path out. Make sure that you take the lane out of play. The only spares that I would recommend hooking the ball at would be like a 2-8 combination, so like the bucket or a 2-8, or a 3-6, 3-6-9-10. Okay, pretty much for everything else that I'm thinking, unless it's a split and you're trying to, maybe spare the 2-4-8-10, or you're trying to spare a 3-4-6-7-10, and you want to curve behind that 3 pin. I would say if it's a regular spare, you're throwing a straight ball at it, except for the bucket and the 2-8 and the 3-6-9-10. Thanks for your question, Matthew. Number 3, okay. Tip number 3, clever ways to deal with haters and use them to fuel your victories. Now, some of you out there may not know this, but I'm just going to come clean. I have haters. I know it's hard to believe, but there are people out there that do not like me and do not like the way that I bowl. Now, I'm 31 years old, and I have learnt a great deal about myself. I've matured a lot as a human being, especially in the last 10 years. But, that's through experience. So let's rewind again a little bit and go back to a time when I didn't know how to handle this and how I felt and how I reacted. So probably the most critical time was right when I went on tour, and a lot of my competitors and a lot of fans were claiming I was a gimmick, that the two-handed style was, illegal, it was cheating, it wasn't the right way to bowl, for whatever that means. And I would read on social media or in forums, some really nasty things, and it used to really affect me. It affected me so much that it got to the point where I was saying to Kimberly, my wife, what's the point? Why am I even bowling out here if my competitors don't like me and I'm not kind of feeling respected, or that I felt like I was, had a right to be there? And furthermore, what's the point if the fans don't want me and don't like me? So that really kind of hurts. And she gave me some great advice. She said, why are you doing this? Why are you bowling? And she says, is it to please your competitors? And I said, of course it's not to please them. She says, is it to please just your fans? I said, well, no, it's not. I bowl because I love it and I can't help it. I have to bowl. And then she asked me, well, what do you want to achieve? And then we went through a list of things that I wanted to achieve. I wanted to be the best in the world. I wanted to win majors. I wanted to win Player of the Years. All of those things, haters had no bearing on. I had no reason to kind of please them. So I decided to focus on the people that I did want to please: myself, my family, my friends, the fans who supported me. All of a sudden now, these things that I was reading about haters hating on me were they were falling on deaf ears. No longer did I care, because as soon as I would, read something that someone didn't like, I would talk to someone who was a fan, and that person made me feel good about what I was doing. So I started to, take the haters for what they were, and they were merely just a voice in the internet that didn't affect me. Just like when you're at a sporting ground and your opposite team is getting cheered by the other guy, you're not listening to what he's saying. You hear it, but you're just not listening to it. And that's exactly what I started to do. I started to understand that you can't impress everyone. You can't be everyone's mate. So focus and spend your time and energy on the people that are going to support you and care for you. But the one thing that I will say that I think is really important about haters and dealing with people who don't like you, or dealing with, even if it's coaches who don't believe in you. I mean, I can't tell you how many kids that I get emails from where they say, oh, my high school coach doesn't like two-handed bowling, or doesn't like the way that I bowl, and thinks that I'm not going to be any good. I can't tell you how many of those emails that I get. And ultimately, sometimes these haters are actually telling you where you're not good. And I use that as motivation to say, okay, so my fans will always be my fans, whether I perform poorly or whether I perform great. But my haters, when I perform bad, they're the ones that are going to come out swinging, telling me how bad I am on short patterns, or, my versatility range, I can't throw the ball very straight, or something like this. And I'm going to hear it. I'm going to hear it from my competitors in the ball paddock, or perhaps you hear it from other teams in your league, that you can only do one thing, that you can't do this. So I used that as motivation. I said, really, you think I can't do that? Well, maybe you're right. Maybe I can't do that yet. And I spent a lot of time working on shorter patterns. And it's still my weakest, my weaker patterns for sure. But have I gotten better? I've gotten better now, where I'm making the cuts on the cheetahs and on the wolves. I'm, sometimes in the Oklahoma Open in May, I blitzed through the field on the wolf and made a run to the lead. These are the patterns that my haters said I couldn't do. So I used it as motivation. Now it's less ammunition for them. And eventually I'm going to be so strong of a player from the support of my fans and using the motivation from the haters to get better, that there'll be nothing left to say one day. And that's what you've got to believe in yourself. You've got to believe that I have the right core of friends that are going to support me no matter what. But I'm going to use these people that hate me. I'm going to use them as motivation. I'm going to listen to what they say and then blur it out. I'm going to take away what I want and blur the hurtful, hateful things that they say straight after it, and give them less reasons to believe that you're a gimmick, to believe that you're not as talented as they are, or perhaps that you're not versatile, or that you're left-handed so you can only bowl one way. Prove them wrong. And believe me, when you hold up a trophy on a pattern or in an environment that you weren't supposed to win at, it feels a lot sweeter, let me tell you. So that's tip number 3, okay? Dealing with the haters, using their hate as motivation rather than focusing on it and letting it consume you, which is what it did to me. I read every word and I let it consume me, and I was miserable for it. When all I had to do was change my viewpoint, and there I had a beautiful wife, a family that supported me, I had friends, and I had fans that were in my corner. So, why take what they are saying to heart, and why not listen to those that care about you? That's number 3. So we'll take another question here before we move on to tip number 4. And we have Armando J. Villa from Hangouts. He's wrote this: if you're striking and start going high and leaving 4 pins, would you rather keep your speed consistent and move a board or 2 deeper, or throw it a pinch faster? Really, really good question. Really good question. Now, this comes down to the player's versatility, okay? So let's run through a few different scenarios, because I'm sure there are people listening and that will listen to this at a later date that may not be as versatile as someone else. So let's say you are very consistent with your speed and you have a very good kind of ability to repeat that speed, but changing that speed up or down, is a little bit difficult. Conversely, let's say you're someone who can change their speed quite consistently and keep that new speed well, but you just can't create a new release. So if you change your trajectory and you change your ball shape, all of a sudden now, when you move in a little bit, you have to change your hand position, because if you throw the ball exactly the same from here and then you move to here and your palms are now different in shape, well, it's very rare that the same release is going to work perfectly from spot to spot. So you have to be able to be consistent. You have to be versatile in your release. So let's say you have those two players, okay? One that can change their speed but can't really move around the lane very much, and the other guy who can move around the lane and can't really adjust their speed. The part that you have to remember is you have to think about, well, what is happening to the lane? Okay, am I required to see, more volume? Am I required to move left because this ball is hooking a little bit too early and now my ball just cannot get down to that break point? So I can't change my speed. So I'm going to have to move left. But when I move left, I can't just throw it the same. Okay, if I throw it the same, I may not get the right angle through the pins. So you have to use your eyes. You have to be able to see your ball shape. Now, for someone like you, Armando, who I guess you're claiming that you can move left or right, you can change your ability to alter your release, and you're also saying that you can throw it faster if you want to. My personal opinion is when I see that ball and it goes through the face for a 4-pin, or it goes high, you're going to have to move, I'm trying to find more oil. I feel like if I'm in a location where the oil has evaporated or it's soaked into the ball and it's now created friction, eventually as I throw that ball, even though I throw it faster, it's still going to read too early. And what will happen then is I will get inconsistency in my ball motion. What I want that ball to do is glide through the first, however long the oil pattern is. I want it to glide through that length of oil pattern, then see the friction down the lane. Now, is that to say that I never stand in the same spot and throw it firmer? No, because sometimes if you're bowling on a sport pattern, you don't want to change your trajectory. You don't want to create more angles, because now you have more room, more errors, more room for errors. Less room for errors, because you're bowling on a harder pattern. So there are times that throwing it firmer is going to be in play, but you also have to understand that you're in a part of the lane that is now less oil and that has friction. You have to be a little bit careful. You have to see that ball, you may not get more than a half a game out of that move. To think that you can stand in the same spot all day long and just continually throw it faster and faster and faster until you reach your maximum speed is probably not a good strategy. You will have to eventually move off of that spot. So for me, I like to use that guide and say, okay, the lane's starting to hook. I'm going to allow that to tell me to move. And I'm going to find more oil, a cleaner, smoother path for my ball to fly down the lane before it hits that friction. Now, if I need to create more axis of rotation, more tilt to get that ball to go through the pins, no worries. I can do that. And that's something that you can work on yourself in your own time and be able to be more versatile. But I would say 8 out of 10 times I'd be moving left, and those 2 times might be like on the US Open pattern. And I'm only trying to get out the last few frames of the game. I'm not going to park myself there for the rest of the day. Okay, I hope that helps. Let's scroll down here and see tip number 4. Okay, tip number 4. A simple way to quickly wipe out the self-talk that comes with a bad game or a bad start and come back stronger than ever. Raise your hand in the internet world listening to me right now if you've ever said, I wish I could take those frames back. I wish I could start this game again. I wish I could start this tournament again. and you feel that I don't know, that emotion of just regret. Why did I start in that spot with this ball? Why did I miss those spares? I mean, raise your hand. I would find it hard to believe that not everyone raised their hand at that point. And it's because you are human. So you're going to have those doubts about yourself. But the problem is those doubts, they will transfer to the next shot or the next game or the next block or whatever it might be. So I pride myself in the ability to never give up. And no matter how far against the wall I feel, I am always going to try to find a way out, okay? You never know what's going to happen the next game, the next frame. You do not know. You may be on a run in sports history. You may strike for days, but you don't know that until it comes. So if you're concerned about how poorly you started, now you aren't focusing about how to be better and how you're going to improve that. All you're focusing on is the past and the errors that you made. Now, I don't know about you, but when I focus on that and I think about that and I talk about that and I'm constantly stressing about the errors that I made, I make those same errors again, or I make more errors. Not easy to do, is it? It's not easy to turn that switch off and be positive. In fact, sometimes it can be, those people can annoy you a little bit, the optimists in the world, you know, those people who are so optimistic about their bowling. You're like, dude, you're bowling terrible. Stop thinking you're still going to win this tournament. You know, it's just not realistic. But that's where they're going to beat you, because they have that self-belief. They have that belief that no matter how bad it starts, you know, it can always get better. Now, if it finishes poorly and you haven't got time to finish, to recover from that error, you take that learning to the next time that you step up onto the lane. So the next time you go bowling, so it doesn't happen again. I remember Brian Voss saying a very famous quote, and I wish I could remember it word for word, but it was something like, we bowlers will lose way more than we ever win. He bowled, I think, 600 and something events at this point. He said, I bowled 620 events and I've only won 20 of them, which means that he lost 600. You know, that's mind-blowing to me, that someone as successful, a Hall of Fame career, one of the best to have ever walked and thrown a ball down the lane, you know, Brian Voss, lost 600 times compared to winning 20. You have to understand that we aren't going to win them all. We're going to win. We're going to lose a whole lot less. But what makes us kind of understand that is learning from those bad games. How do I change my perception that this is a poor performance and turn it into an education? How do I take something away from this, so next time I'm in this position and I start thinking, oh my goodness, you know, that self-talk comes back, oh, I'm doing terribly. This is what happened to me last week in league. This is what happened the last time I was in this position in this tournament. You can immediately, you know, throw that talk away and say, well, no, you're prepared for this now. This happened last time. You have a game plan. If it's nerves, it's okay. I'm going to take a drink of water. I'm going to take some deep breaths. I'm going to focus on my process here. I'm not going to worry about if I'm going to make the cut or if I'm going to, you know, beat my average or whatever your goal is for that time on the lanes. So creating strategies based off performances is critical in improving and wiping away that self-talk and self-belief. You know, people think it's arrogant, and it rubs me the wrong way when, as someone, a player, like I was. Here's a perfect story. Okay, in Japan recently with Mike Fagan, one of the greatest players on tour. We were both walking and we were both talking about some improvements we're going to make on our game, and we both said that we're the best player in the world. And I loved that we both said it. It wasn't arrogant. It was self-belief. It was the thought that when I'm on the approach in a bowling center, there is no one here that can beat me. There is no one here that can. And if they do, then I'm going to get better. So the next time I see that person, they're not going to beat me. And we laughed about it because neither of us thought it was an arrogant thing to say, but we both believe that self-belief is one of the reasons why we're both such great players. To know that I can beat Mike and I'm going to beat Mike and that I'm the best player in the world is going to help when those negative thoughts pop into my head that, you've started off poorly. Well, I'm the best player in the world. If anyone can come back, it's me. And I know now Mike thinks the same way. After a bad performance or a bad game or a bad start, you think he's like, oh no, that's this tournament over for me. No, it's, I'm the best player in the world. And if anyone can come out of this hole, it's me. So that never give up attitude is important. It's hard to learn because there are parts of us that just want to crawl up into a little ball and wish we never bowled that day or that squad. But at the end of the day, those are the times that you're going to learn more about yourself, more about your own game. You're going to be better for it. And let me tell you something right now. You are not the only one thinking it in the bowling center. You are not the only one thinking that you are the best spare shooter, you are the best clutch shot maker, or you're the best complete bowler or most versatile bowler. There are 10 other people thinking it at the exact same time that you are. So the ones that aren't thinking it, I want you to think about that. The ones that don't believe they are the best or can come back from a bad game, the ones that don't believe it, how many times do they come back? Not very many. Okay, so that was tip number 4. Let's take another question here. We're going to read here. Graham Webb says, when you're doing well, how do you keep your emotions in check so you don't get too excited? That's a really good question. I think for myself, maturity helped with that a lot. And kind of controlling my emotions has been something that through experiences in life and on the lanes, I've learned to deal with how my body is changing. The heart rate is increasing. My body movements and my body language is suggesting that I'm excited. And there are moments for those in which you can release that energy. Maybe it's, the clutch shot to win your match and you can just let it out a little bit. But during a tournament or during a game, bowling is, for the most part, it is a marathon. It is a long time to compete. Excessive, kind of release of emotions, whether it be through anger or whether it be through excitement, can affect your bowling game, both positively and negatively. So some people thrive on it. Someone like Pete Weber thrives on that anger, needs to get angry in order to bowl well. He believes if he is to win a tournament, he cannot do it with a smile on his face. He has to do it with his eyebrows facing towards and pointing and yelling at people. And it works for him. He's one of the greatest bowlers to ever be, especially when he's angry. So, but if you watch Pete, even someone like Pete, okay, there are moments where he does keep them in check. Now, we're talking about a week-long qualifying. We're talking about a long period of time throwing the ball. And sure, on TV is when we see most of it, in those short formats, those short bursts. But if you were to ever watch Pete bowl for an entire tournament, you would see how well he does keep his emotions in check for the most part. There's a little aggression here and there, and we all have it. Even myself, I kind of keep a lid on it. Just kind of just open the window a little bit, let a little out, and then close it, because you certainly don't want to, go off the rails too early, too much. Or sometimes you just open that window and it all goes gushing out, and all of a sudden now you feel like you're exhausted and that you've just spent all of your energy in a celebration. And I felt like that too. So even if you watch Pete's window only goes down a little bit throughout the week. Sometimes he'll yell at someone or something, but it's short. It's the window only goes down for a little bit, then it goes back up and he's bowling again. So my point to all of this would be, holding it all in is not going to do you any favors, okay? Keeping them in check like that, for me, means there's just going to be an eruption. There's just going to be a point where something good or bad happens, and it's just all going to burst out. And to me, that's going to be a negative effect on my game, because I feel like it's going to throw me off my game, rather than just keeping my emotions in check, kind of keeping them smooth, letting a little bit here out, letting them go up and down just a little bit. So I would, if I were you, Graham, the next time that you feel like you're going to get really excited, is maybe just slap it out a little bit and just give yourself a bit of a nod and a bit of a fist pump, and kind of let the window go down just a little bit. Holding it all in, I think, is going to be bad. And I'm almost certain that there have been occasions in which someone like Pete has probably been told, hey, stop pointing and getting angry, and he's held it all in. And I'm almost certain those are the times in which, Pete erupts, because he's just held it all in and he just needs to get it out. So that's what I would do. Okay, we've got 10 minutes left of the webinar. We have one question left. And before I answer that question, I want to share with everybody, where they can get more information. What I'm saying today is just the tip of the iceberg, and what we offer at the International Art of Bowling. Okay, Diandra and I, we built a community, and it's for bowlers just like you listening right now. It's for the high-end bowler. It's for the beginner bowler. It is amazing. We have hundreds of resources for you to learn from, including training plans, practice guides, tips for making, trips to your pro shop more valuable. We have mental game plans so you become mentally stronger, and honestly, so much more. Actually, one of the really cool things that we do is what I'm doing right now, this kind of show. We do it every month with Diandra, myself, Bill Spigner, Joey Sarah, and we have special guests that come in. And for 1 hour, we talk about everything and anything to improve your games, from maintaining your equipment to having a sports psychologist and Dr. Dean come on the show and help you with your mental game. This is all within our circle, which is a monthly membership program, which will be opening to the public next week. We have limited spots, and the doors for that circle will close very quickly. So we're going to open the floodgates, let a few people in, and then we're going to close them up again, and we won't be reopening the circle doors for a little while. So don't miss out. Get in there if you're looking to improve your game on a wide range of topics, and be in a community with hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of other bowlers who are already in the community, inside the circle, willing to help you push your game like we have been able to push theirs. So if you have any questions about that, info@iabowling.com. Send your emails there, and me and my staff and the team would be more than happy to help you get into the circle and also understand more about it. Anyway, so that's my pitch for the circle. I'll leave that with you, and we'll finish off by taking on the last topic here, the last tip that I'm going to share with you, which is number 5. How to avoid mistakes that cost games by giving you a super simple way to know when to change balls or when to move your feet. Now, isn't it ironic that not just too long ago, Armando asked the question if he should move or if he should throw it faster. And I said something which I'm going to repeat now, but in more detail. It's about watching your ball and allowing your ball to tell the story of what's happening on the lane, and to give you a guide on what to do. Now, bowling is one of the absolute incredibly unique sports in which one adjustment today will not necessarily mean it's the same adjustment tomorrow or the day after. But if you were to build up an arsenal of adjustments and understanding and learning about how your game matches with its adjustments. So for me, I'm going to have a very different adjustment kind of strategy to someone who throws it much straighter than I, or maybe with one hand. So I can't just go out there and tell you that, listen, all you need to do is move 3 left and change your axis rotation to this degrees, and that's the move. That's the move on the house pattern. It's the move on the sport pattern. It's the move on the US Open pattern. I wish I could say that. It would make life a lot more easier coaching, but unfortunately it's not. So what you have to learn, and something that a lot of the pros have trained their eye at, including myself, is watching the shape of the ball, but not necessarily just down the lane, but also through the pins. I talk to a lot of students and I'll watch them bowl a shot and they'll leave a 10 pin or a 7 pin or maybe a 9 pin, and I'll ask them, why did you leave that? And they can't answer it. I don't know why I left that. I hit the pocket, it should have struck. And with today's technology and bowling balls and the power that we're able to generate from those new bowling balls, the fact that oil patterns in a lot of environments have gotten a little bit easier to get to the pocket, and the fact that today a lot of people are increasing their rev rate, so they're throwing the ball with more power, it's hard to justify why we don't strike every time. But let me tell you right now, my rev rate is around about 575 RPMs. I'm one of the most consistent at repeating my shots. I have a vast knowledge in my equipment and my adjustments, and I can't strike every time I hit the pocket. So if I can't do it, if the greats before me can't do it, then thinking that it should strike for you every single time, that's the first step. Understanding there's a problem, okay? So if you can identify that there is something wrong, you're not just hitting the pocket, okay? You're not just doing that, because let's face it, a lot of times we can all hit the pocket consistently. The difference is how do we get the pins to fall down consistently? And it all happens as the ball goes down the lane, where it starts to hook, and how it exits the pin deck. Something that a lot of players don't look at, don't realize, is that they think their ball has gone over their target and it's hit the pocket and, oh, I've left a 10 pin. Well, perhaps your ball hooked, a fraction early, or maybe you threw it just a fraction faster. So now the ball has changed its angle of entry into the pocket, and now it's kind of gone maybe a foot longer down the lane before it makes the turn towards the pocket. Now the 6 pin doesn't hit the 10 pin, it wraps around the 10 pin based off of that. So you have to be able to know, I didn't just hit the pocket, I threw a different shot. I threw it a little bit quicker. Now you watch that ball go off the pin deck, and that's going to tell you a lot as well. So if my ball goes off the pin deck and it rolls over the 8 pin for a right-hander, and it rolls over the 8 pin spot, my angle of entry is very, very large. And if I'm leaving, consistently leaving 9 pins, it's not bad luck anymore. My angle is so sharp that, of course, I'm leaving 9 pins. My ball off the pin deck is missing the 9 pin spot. So naturally, it's causing the 9 pin to stand. The 4 pin can stand. The 4-9, when your angles are too sharp. These are things that can happen. And if you think it's just bad luck, then you're not going to win the tournament. Because let me tell you, okay, in the world of luck, good and bad, bowlers, we just don't, it doesn't affect us the way that you think it does. It's all in our mind, okay? Everything happens for a reason. Now, don't get me wrong. There are things that you can say is bad luck in terms of the timing. It's like, if only that pin had have fallen or had have stood at a different time. And that's how I believe in things. I don't believe in it to be bad luck, because it happened for a reason, okay? My ball left that pin. It wasn't miraculous that it stood, because physics tells me the pins went this way, the ball went that way, and it left that pin. There's nothing you can do, Jason. I'm sorry. That's what physics is telling you. So that's not unlucky, but the timing can be just poor. It can be, why did my ball have to go through at that angle? Why did the pins go through at that angle and leave that pin at that moment? I needed that one to fall. But understanding why that pin stood is going to be critical in the ability to you stop leaving that pin. If your ball is hitting the pocket and it's deflecting towards the 9 pin, then the 6 pin is going to fall into the gutter. It's going to be a flat 10. Your ball has deflected rather than drove through the pocket. So if you're leaving a flat 10, it's not bad luck, okay? Yes, it's bad timing that your ball went through the pins like that. But if you were to throw the exact same shot again, you would get the exact same result. Not bad luck. You need to change something. So watching that ball where it hooks, if it hooks too early, sometimes if you're leaving 4 pins, you'll notice that your ball is hooking just a fraction earlier than where it was before. Still hit in the pocket, it's high, still hit in the pocket, but now your ball is hooked a fraction earlier. You're going to have to make an adjustment. And just like Armando asked earlier, do you throw it faster? Do you move a little left? That's going to be up to you, because every single day is going to be a different move. Every pattern that you're bowling on, it's not the same move. I wish it were. It would make coaching and my life bowling a lot easier. Oh, I left a 4 pin. Well, the universal move for that move is just throw it 1 mile an hour faster, or 1.6 kilometers an hour faster. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So experience is going to teach you, and you're also going to have to watch your ball go down the lane. So let's finish this off with a specific scenario on whether I would change ball or if I would move my feet. Now, a lot of players I have arguments with about this is players tend to change balls relatively quickly. And don't get me wrong, it's a great move, because sometimes that ball just isn't going to strike for you, or it's reading the lanes at the wrong time. So you need a ball to be less aggressive, more aggressive, whatever you're looking for. But the thing that blows my mind is when a player is striking with ball A, and it looks great through the pins, and they're shooting the lights out. And then let's say they leave a 4 pin. And like, oh, okay, the ball went a little higher. I need a ball that's going to give me that length again. So I'm going to stay in the same spot. I'm going to change my ball, and I'm going to use a ball that's less aggressive so it gets down the lane, so I can stay in the same spot, same target, and continue with that. And look, don't get me wrong, it could work. But in my mind, I'm thinking this ball is going through the pins really well. This ball is reacting to the shape that I'm looking for. It's hitting the pins in a certain way where the 6 pin is slapping the 10 out, or maybe it's throwing a few messengers across, and it's striking, it's doing its job. Why would I want to put that away so quickly? So my first move isn't to change ball, it's to change the path of that ball ever so slightly. So I'm on fresh oil, or I'm on a path in which is close to what I was on. Maybe it's a little straighter. Maybe I've moved a little further right, so I'm not curving as much. But I love the way the ball's going to the pins, so I'm going to hang on to it. Now, the tricky part is when to let go of it. And that's for you to be able to make that decision when you start to see that ball is not going through the pins anymore. It is not sending that messenger across. The 10 pin is not getting slapped by the 6 pin anymore. And then you have to make a decision a lot quicker. But I bowled probably some of my best sets, my highest, block scores, where I've been able to use that same ball, and I've just made adjustments with my feet or with my hand, because that ball was just doing the right thing in that house in that right moment. I don't want to give that up. I think a lot of people tend to focus themselves just about getting to the pocket, and they're not understanding why pins are getting left and blaming luck or racks or something else was the reason why. But ultimately, you've changed your ball, you've changed your angle of entry, and now it's different. So the pins are telling you it's not working. So I would always hang on to that ball until I am certain that it's done. And it's tough to put a ball down that was striking to automatically change, but that's where you've got to know your equipment. That's when you've got to understand, okay, so I've been able to use this ball previously, but you know what? When I've moved just that extra board, that extra 5 boards, I can't create the angle. I cannot get my ball to go through the pin. So there's my limit with this ball. Okay, I'm not going to change immediately. I'm going to move towards my limit. And when my limit, if I'm still striking, I'm going to keep going until it just stops. Now I'm going to change ball, because now the shape is, or the core or the design of that ball is no longer suiting the shape that you're trying to create. Understand your equipment, know your equipment, understand your limits, being versatile, improving those limits so you can extend the range of your equipment and its versatility, critical when you're in the middle of a game or when it's time to change something. And if you don't have that knowledge, you're going to run into a bad game. If it's time to move and you're stubborn and you're not looking at it and you do not want to make that adjustment, the bad game will come. It's not a matter if, it's a matter when. And if you're fortunate enough that you get through 3 games of league or maybe 1 game at the end of league to get through it, that's awesome. But do it 100 times and see how many times you come out the other side better off. Again, the best bowlers in the world will watch their balls, will completely know the shape, will completely know their move, will completely know their equipment. And then all of a sudden, they'll know it's time to change my feet, keeping this ball, or perhaps it's I'm going to stay where I am and I'm going to use this ball, I'm going to change it, or it's I'm going to move my feet and change my ball. You have to be able to watch all of that happening, and it's only useful is if you have the knowledge and understanding what your move will be, what your experience has taught you, what has worked, what didn't work, what your equipment is telling you. So I hope in the last hour and 5 or 6 minutes, or however long this has gone for, that those 5 tips that helped me. I learnt about those 5 tips. I worked hard on those 5 tips for at least the last 5 years, some of them the last 3 years. And it's no coincidence that my bowling went from very good to one of the best in the world. So I'm confident that if you take away what I've said today and apply it to your own games, you will become a better player. There is no doubt in my mind, none. And if you'd like to further your education and understanding your moves, maybe understanding your equipment better, learning how to be stronger mentally, sign up for the circle. Become a member in a week when we open up the doors and we allow people to come in, sign up, be a member, get that information within our community, share your problems, share your successes, and allow us to help you become the best bowler you possibly can be. I really appreciate you all for listening today. Thank you for joining me on my webinar. If you want me to do another one, then bombard my Twitter account at @jbelmo or my Facebook page and tell me that I should be doing more of these. I enjoy them. I must say my throat's a little dry. I'm just going to take a quick sip. But I enjoy doing these, so if you want to hear more, let me know. Till next time, everyone, be good, peace, cheers, and see you in the circle.